Distinguished delegates and colleagues, good morning, and welcome to the final day of the AMDIN Second Annual Conference here in Windhoek. Over the past 2 days, this conference has demonstrated the power of knowledge sharing, collaboration, and transformative leadership in shaping Africa's public service landscape. The insights and recommendations emerging from our engagement reaffirms that sustainable development and inclusive growth require bold leadership, innovation, and strong institutions. As we conclude with the final presentations of the day, let us remain engaged, inspired, and committed to translating these discussions into meaningful actions across our institutions and countries. I want to thank you for your valuable participations and wish you a fruitful final sessions of the day. So we are moving with our program. Sub-theme, Resilient Public Service for Sustainable Development and Climate Adaptation. Prof. Jacob Marengo, or Marungo, who is the Vice President of Southern Africa, AMDIN, and Executive Director of National Institute of Administration in Zambia, will chair the sub-theme. We have 2 presenters for this sub-theme. That is Ms. Amanda Selmaga, our UNDP representative here in Namibia, and Mrs. Gaone Machoro, who is the Director in the Directorate of Public Service Management in Botswana. Ms. Machoro will present online, and Ms. Elmaga Amanda is in our mix. Very special to Ms. Amanda. When we extended our invitation to come and be the key speaker here, she was not around in the country. And I believe she did not receive by then see our invitation. Immediately when she landed at the airport on Monday, she saw the message. She replied, "I'm available, ready to serve." Thank you very much. Prof. Malungo, come and take your floor.
Good morning, colleagues. You are not smiling on the first day. Have you eaten your breakfast? Thanks so very much. We get back to work. As indicated, let me call upon the presenters, and I invite Madam Amanda Kabeja Serumaga to come right in here. Thank you. The person you see here, Madam Amanda Kabeja Serumaga, has got a history working for more than 25 years in development practice and with a lot of experience in public policy and management and governance and the rule of law. She has been with UNDP as a resident representative for Mauritius and Seychelles, May 2019 to September 2025. As we heard, she's here now. She's here, we are in Namibia, just to remind ourselves. That's where she's resident representative. But she began her UNDP career as a chief rule of law and governance team leader in Khartoum, Sudan, way back in 2008 to 2011, and worked also as a team leader for governance and rule of law and deputy country director in South Sudan, 2011-2015. Then UNDP Boko Haram coordinator, New York, US 2015 to 2016. Then UNDP country director and resident representative, Nairobi, Kenya, 2016-2019. You can see there was no gap. This year ends, she moves to another one. And prior to joining the UNDP, she managed her legal advisory consultant services, the legal SO Consult, and this was 1998 to 2000, and served as a senior technical advisor to the justice law and order sector in Uganda, and as a consultant legal specialist 2000 to 2004. And then a country director for Action Aid International, 2004 to 2007. Academically, she holds a postgraduate certificate in human rights, obtained 2023 from Queen Mary College, University of London. She has a Juris Doctor, 94, Osgood Hall Law School, York University in Canada, and she has a Master of Science in Public Policy and Management. She obtained in 2005 in South London, and she has the Honours Bachelor of Arts in Humanities and English Language and Literature. I'm sure these were some of the formative years of her career. 1991, York University, Canada, and also is a barrister and a solicitor and a member of the Law Society of Ontario since 96. Ontario should be Canada. And she is a Canadian citizen born in Uganda, Museveni. So this is a person I'm presenting to you, and you can see already that even before she talks issues to do with public policy, and in this case, she'll be looking at resilient public service for sustainable development and climate adaptation. I present to you Madam Amanda Serumaga to have this presentation brought to you. Why don't we give her a big round of applause? Thank you. She'll present, and then we shall interact, because I know that she has, with this CV, she has other engagements, so that we could leave her to decide whether she stays on to the other one or she can give space to the other one. But we'll give her space now to give us this keynote speech aside. Thank you. Over to you.
Good morning. Before I start, I was just thinking about the level of introduction, rather intimidating in the sense that I don't want to disappoint you about what I'm going to speak to. But having said that, let me start with protocol. So Mr. Tombola Muke, the president of the African Management Development Institutes Network, Dr. Harold Morangi, the executive director of NIPAM, Professor Jacob Malungo, the vice president of AMDIN Southern Africa, and of course the executive director of the Public Administration Institute in Zambia, distinguished leaders of management development institutes across our continent, members of the diplomatic corps, esteemed delegates, colleagues and friends, and once again, good morning to you. Can you hear me well? So my remarks are intended really as food for thought, some reflection. It's not a presentation. It's intended to be a conversation about some of the things we need to think about or we would want to think about in terms of public administration and climate adaptation. And of course, it's a privilege to stand before you today at this important gathering. And on behalf of the United Nations Development Programme, I extend a sincere appreciation to the Namibia Institute of Public Administration and the African Management Development Institutes Network and all partners who've convened this conference. Hosting this second AMDIN conference here in Windhoek reflects not only Namibia's commitment to strengthening public institutions, but also a broader recognition across the continent that Africa's development ambitions will rise or fall on the strength of its institutions and the people who lead them. The overall theme of this conference is Transformative Public Service Leadership for Sustainable Development and Inclusive Growth in Africa. And the conversations over the last 2 days, I'm made to understand, have focused on leadership, institutions, innovation, and public service. These are not new topics. Many in this room have spent years working on public administration reform and institutional strengthening. But the environment around us is changing quite quickly. And that means some of the questions we ask ourselves also need to change. Today, I've been asked to focus on the sub-theme of resilient public services for sustainable development and climate adaptation. It's not merely a topic for discussion. It sits very closely to the center of how governments function. We're operating in a period where multiple pressures are converging at the same time. Climate shocks are becoming more frequent and more intense. Fiscal pressures are growing. Technology is changing how people live and work, and citizens rightly expect better, faster, and more responsive services. And increasingly, these challenges do not arrive separately, they arrive together. Many institutions are now being asked to respond to several pressures simultaneously, often while working with constrained resources and increasing expectations. At the same time, there is another side to this story. Across Africa, we are seeing progress. We're seeing governments embrace digital transformation. We're seeing stronger regional collaboration. We are seeing innovations in public service delivery and encouraging examples of institutions adapting under difficult circumstances. These achievements matter, but progress should not make us comfortable. A growing youth population and a renewed drive for regional integration present powerful levers for change. The question is, how do we harness these levers? How do we make sure progress is durable? Because resilience is not simply about managing the next crisis. It's about building institutions that continue to function, continue to learn, and continue to deliver under changing conditions. For many years, resilience has often been understood as the ability to recover after shock. But recovery alone is no longer enough. A resilient public service is not simply one that responds effectively to crisis. It's a public service that can anticipate risk, adapt early, and protect development gains before they're lost. And a future-ready public service goes even further. It does not just absorb disruption. It learns from it and changes because of it. There's also an important shift we need to make in how we think about climate adaptation. Too often, adaptation is treated as primarily an environment ministry issue. But if we're honest, that is no longer the reality. Increasingly, it's a public administration issue. When drought affects agricultural production, ministries of finance feel it. When floods damage infrastructure, local governments feel it. When climate pressures influence migration, health systems, education systems, and labor markets feel it. Eventually, these issues arrive on the desks of diverse public servants, which means adaptation cannot sit in a single ministry or a single policy document. It requires a whole-of-government approach, integrated planning, and institutions that can work across sectors and across traditional boundaries. And that has implications for how we design institutions and how we prepare leaders. At the UNDP, our work is guided by the conviction that effective governance is the foundation on which sustainable development sits. We are supporting countries across Africa to strengthen institutions that are accountable, inclusive, and capable of managing complexity. Allow me to highlight 3 areas that are particularly important. The first is integrating resilience into public policy and planning. Too often, systems remain heavily focused on reacting after a crisis occurs. But reacting is expensive. It's expensive financially, it's expensive socially, and it's expensive politically. The challenge is moving from reaction to anticipation. This means integrating climate risks into national planning, public finance systems, infrastructure decisions, and service delivery models. It means strengthening foresight, risk management, and data systems so that institutions can see emerging challenges before they become crises. Here in Namibia, UNDP's work on climate-resilient agriculture and sustainable energy initiatives is not simply about environmental outcomes. They are governance initiatives designed to ensure that public services can continue to function and protect the most vulnerable in the face of climate shocks. This requires public institutions that can connect climate policy, disaster risk management, biodiversity, energy, water, food systems, and public finance into practical solutions that reach people and communities. The second area is investing in people and institutional capability. A resilient system is only as strong as the people who run it. We often talk about capacity as if it's mainly a training issue. And it's true that training matters, skills matter. But experience has also shown us that institutions do not struggle simply because capable people are missing. Sometimes institutions struggle because systems make it difficult for capable people to succeed. The problems public servants are dealing with today rarely fit neatly into organizational structures. They require people who can work across sectors, build partnerships, use evidence effectively, and navigate uncertainty. This is why adaptive leadership, strategic foresight, and system thinking are becoming increasingly important. Here in Namibia, our partnership with NIPAM and the government on digital transformation and skills development is intended to strengthen exactly these capabilities. UNDP's support to the Ministry of Home Affairs, Immigration, Safety and Security on digital legal identity is also part of this effort as a frontier solution for equitable access to public services, driving inclusive economic growth, and contributing to ensuring that no Namibian is left behind in the digital age. because technology can help governments become faster, but speed alone does not create trust. Trust still depends on fairness, accessibility, and whether people feel that institutions work for them. Technology must also expand inclusion and access rather than creating new barriers. The third and final area is making sure resilience contributes to broader development outcomes. Resilience cannot become another separate agenda running alongside everything else. True resilience is about more than just bouncing back. Every dollar invested in climate adaptation must also be a dollar that advances gender equality, reduces poverty, and strengthens democratic governance. Resilience strategies must be intentionally aligned with broader goals. This is where Agenda 2063 and the Sustainable Development Goals remain important guides. They remind us that development challenges are interconnected and that our responses need to be interconnected as well. And perhaps this brings us back to a simple point in my closing remarks. Citizens do not experience government as strategies, institutional frameworks, or reform plans. The real test of transformation is whether public institutions can turn national plans into visible results, stronger livelihoods, cleaner energy, safer communities, healthy ecosystems, and more inclusive access to services. That is where resilience becomes real. And it's also where public trust is built, or where public trust is lost. UNDP's Solar for Health initiative across the continent provides reliable, clean energy to off-grid health facilities. This strengthens the resilience of health services to climate-related power outages, while simultaneously improving health outcomes, which is SDG 3, providing clean energy, which is SDG 7, and reducing emission. This is the kind of integrated solutions approach that future-ready public services must embrace. So as this dialogue continues, I would encourage all of us to think not only about what institutions need to withstand shocks, but also what institutions need to adapt, evolve, and deliver in a much more uncertain future. UNDP remains committed to working with governments and institutions across the continent as partners in this effort. Thank you for your kind attention.
I'm sure she has not disappointed us. I think she's bringing issues of policy and planning, which in this case, public service, this must be around mandatory public service training and certification, I add. Because we have seen, when we don't have the mandatory public service training and certification, anything goes. And these have to be put in our acts, our statutes, so that we can protect them. She's talking about human capital development. All our cadres in public service should be exposed to the necessary skills. In here, it means that the skills have to include digital skills, because you can't run public service without the digital technologies that we have. What that means in terms of human capital, working very closely with the systems, is to have institutional capacities. Now, this is where you talk about infrastructure. This is where you talk about the attributes and mindset. I mean, she's talking about institutions which should be very responsive systems in our case. I think she's talking about very broad national, regional, and global ecosystems. I think these are very important for us, because as we develop, we must have climate justice. In other words, each broad thing that she's talking about here has to identify the national, regional, and global areas of development. And there must be synergies, in this case, around the region, and in this case, around the globe. I think these are the issues that we must reflect upon as we talk about climate change, as we talk about resilience in the public service, because without these elements, it becomes very difficult for us to develop as such and develop in a sustainable manner. I want to invite you to do two things here now. First of all, I'm sure all of us are following. First of all, to Giver, are you there? I see some of you are not following what I'm saying here. Are you there? You know, as a professor, you need to make sure that you are with the people, otherwise you're alone, okay? Why don't we give her a big round of applause for this powerful presentation? And since you have been following, I now want to invite probably two, three questions or comments, then we could move to another discussion. Hey. 1, 2, 3. Keep your numbers. There's a fourth one. Okay, the fourth one is a bonus, then we shall end. So 1, 2, 3, 4, in that order. Please, we have heard. So just make your point and move. Don't give us lectures, no. Lectures, we can go to our classes. Just give us your point and move on. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Prof. and VP for the region, Southern region. Thank you so much, the presenter. I think your presentation was something that is eye-catching.
You can introduce yourselves briefly. No CVs.
Oh my God. Naslede B. Naslede is my name. I'm the registrar and board secretary to the person that has just called me to present the verse. I also serve as Secretariat for AMDIN Southern Region, head of Secretariat. Thank you, Prof. Malungo, for that. Mine is about the digital immigrants. Most governments in Africa are currently run by digital immigrants. What do I mean? These are people that are born before computer, may not understand the way the digital space has evolved. Now, the challenge that we have is that the digital immigrants are not able to invite the digital champions. These are the young ones born in the year 2000, the Gen Zs. Now, these are the people that are born with a tablet in their hands. And these are the young ones that are in their 20s now. Now, joining the public service, they find the digital immigrants who are not able to adopt them. Then how do you expect public service delivery to be at the helm when you have this difference between the digital immigrants and the digital champions? Finally, mine is to just say, for as long as we are focused on policy formulation and very little attention is paid to implementation and changing people's lives, the minister in charge of gender and equity yesterday, she mentioned that for as long as you're talking about issues of climate change, issues of adaptation, the villager out there, they want running water. They will not listen to your theories about adaptation, resilience. They want something that is pragmatic and changes their lives. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, for allowing me to add a voice to the conference. Patricia, am I audible? I'm Patricia Chikalanga from Zambia. I'm Director Strategic Planning under Cabinet Office. I want to thank the presenter for this paper, because when I looked at the topics for the conference, I was worried because I noticed that under the issues to do with resilience, I could see just one component relating to climate change. Being a strategic planner, I am thinking and reflecting on how it was during the time of COVID. It hit the public service so badly, but it's like after the COVID, we relaxed. I expected at this conference to see how we are preparing for other future eventualities, because COVID is not the only thing. Right now, I think there's another virus that is emerging. How are we preparing as a public service? I didn't see much attention focused into that direction. So for me, this is my plea, that as we plan for such conferences, let's prepare. How should we position ourselves? Are we having the correct infrastructure to support us during such shocks? For instance, when you said that we are going to have arrangements for officers to work from home, do we have the infrastructure, even where the officers are coming from? Simply put is, how are we preparing for other shocks and not just climate change? Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Speaker. My name is Louise Lepan, and I'm from the School of Government. If we have a continuum of fear on the one side and trust on the other side, for me the middle ground seems to be inertia. You can hear me?
You can speak louder.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me now?
It's better.
Apologies. So I'm Louise Lepan from the National School of Government. And I'm making a thesis that on the one side, you have fear, and on the continuum, the opposite side would then be trust. Somewhere in the middle would be inertia. We've got policy frameworks and lack of implementation. So we use policy frameworks to hide behind and prevent ourselves from delivering. So my question would be, what is your advice to AMDIN and public service training institutes around foresight and anticipatory planning, anticipatory governance in preparing senior managers, public servants for what could potentially be civil unrest, service delivery protests, climate change, floods, force majeure, etc. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Matayo Busieka from DPSS, South Africa. Thank you very much for that insightful presentation. My brief question is, you referred to the youth bulge, which is a very important challenge. It is, as you know, potentially a very essence of development, in a sense that we can harness that youth bulge for developing our countries, but without opportunities, it is a danger, and it is a bomb that is waiting to explode. So the question is, in the context of the MDIs, how do you develop adaptive leadership or integrate system thinking and adaptive leadership within the MDIs, so that as we bring a new generations of leaders in the public sector, that thinking system thinking and adaptive thinking, and you talked of foresight and all that. Those elements, how do we integrate them in the curricula so that we move away from the old program that we have of capacity building, but we also reflect on, as my sister said, after COVID, we seem to have forgotten that disasters are here to stay. So are we engaging enough on that through the training manuals? Thank you.
Thank you very much for what are actually quite difficult questions. I will try my best to just give you my own reflection, and I'm sure that in the conversations that will be had, you can take it further. With respect to the question from the registrar from the Secretariat of AMDIN about digital, did you call them digital immigrants? And then digital champions, the young people. I'm not sure if your question is, well, how do we adopt digitalization when the public service workers were not born in the digital age? But I was born in an age where we had rotary phones. I don't know how many of you remember the rotary phone. And right now we don't use rotary phones, and here we are. So I don't think that it is fair to suggest that in a continent where the average age of an African is around 19 years old, and she's female, that is the archetypal African at the moment, and we know that almost 70% of Africans are under the age of 24, it's not optional for us to embrace the digital age. This is who is going to be leading Africa. I think the real question becomes, what are the guardrails we're putting around digitalization and artificial intelligence to enable government services to become accessible and inclusive? I think some of the most important things are about, if you have digital public infrastructure, what do I mean? You can do instant payments by using digital work. You can apply for a visa. You can do all of these things. The thing that is important is that what barriers does it present in terms of language barriers, in terms of barriers around disability, in terms of literacy barriers, and in terms of just making sure that the process itself does not require you to have a PhD in order to register for a bank account, for example. But I think the more important point that I want to share with you is that we have to decide what success looks like, right? If we are talking about governments that reach the furthest people and it reaches them quickly, then you're going to have to embrace digitalization. What you need to do is to ensure that there's governance around digitalization so that it doesn't invite in all of the negative things that we see with artificial intelligence and digitalization, which is the online abuse, harassment of children, exploitation, and so on. But in short, my point is, and I'll use the phrase, I think it's from a movie or something, you adapt or you die. There isn't an option to refuse to engage with the digital world. With the question from Patricia from Zambia, the Director of Strategic Planning, I think you're spot on. We were all quite comfortable with and relieved to come out of the COVID period. But of course, there will always be external shocks and internal shocks. One of the things that I would throw back to this audience is that we know that there is going to be El Nino in Southern Africa region by the end of this year. How have you prepared as a public administration? The questions are going to be, you're going to have likely drought, which means you're going to have issues on food security, which means that you're going to have issues of disease, which means you're going to have issues of access to services and people traveling long distances. We know the El Nino is coming. The time for planning for the El Nino is not when it hits. The time for planning for it is now. And I think those examples, or the examples of how we came out of COVID, I know that I was based in Mauritius throughout the COVID period. One of the things that UNDP did do was to help government promulgate a work-from-home policy. And that work-from-home policy set the parameters for the civil service about the basis upon which you could work from home, the infrastructure that you had to have at home. The government itself provided actually free internet access for most of the country and increased the terabytes that you could have so that there could be work from home, so that government services didn't come to a halt. But what they also did do was accelerate digital public infrastructure, because most of the things that you needed to do for government, you needed to go physically to a government office. So you saw an immediate proliferation of government that is actually a digital government and digital by default. So I think that the point is well taken. Strategic planning, and it will lead to the question about foresight and systems thinking, that we shouldn't wait for crises to decide to plan about the crises. We need to have an anticipatory kind of government. And that leads me to Ms. Louise's question around fear and trust continuum and the gap in between, the inertia. It would be interesting to understand fear of who and of what, but beyond that, if you're saying that policy frameworks are there to hide behind rather than not have, there's no intention for them to be translated into implemented policy, well, that speaks to the broader question I spoke to, which is governance. There is a social contract between citizens and the state that governs them, and the executive that governs them. And this is why I spoke to the point that it's not only socially risky, it's not only financially risky, but it's also politically risky to fail to implement policies that address what are the articulated needs of a community. And what we saw, and I'm not going to name countries because that would not be correct, but we've seen where we've seen youth uprisings across Africa, where we've seen governments collapse, and it's not because of any one thing. Oftentimes it is because there is a great distance between what has been articulated as public policy and what people feel on a day-to-day basis. I can tell you, and you heard my background, I've worked in countries where the government collapsed simply based on the rising price of sugar or of bread. And so an inability to actually make those connections between how people live reality and what it is they expect from their government, and making sure that the public service officers, civil servants, policymakers have the skills necessary to plan, to mitigate the discomfort, and to strengthen the social contract between citizens and the state is an important consideration. And finally, and thank you for allowing me to continue, is the youth bulge. I did say, and maybe one of you who is perhaps with the statistics ministry can correct me, but I'm fairly sure that the average age of the 1.4 billion Africans that there are is under 24. This has serious implications across many parameters. Let's look at it from a pensions point of view, right? If these people are not employed, those of us who are above 50, no one is going to pay our pensions because they're not employed, they're not contributing to the pension system. If you look at the point about infrastructure, capacities, building roads, building schools, education systems, these are the people that are going to do this work. So in terms of the essence of development, the essence of development is about investment, and investment for the future. Dealing with the now, but investment of the future. So how do you develop adaptive leaderships and systems thinking? Perhaps a professor and all of those who run the NIPAMs across your countries, you can explain why you don't simply add systems thinking and foresight to your curricula. And I would challenge you that every one of us sitting here is a systems thinker already. You have already budgeted for many different things across your income. You already anticipate that your children need to go to school, and you have all of the logistics that you have to do around that. You have anticipated the sort of savings and the length of time you have to work in order for you to have a reasonable retirement. These are systems thinkings, these are foresight aspects. The question is why are we not able to translate that kind of capacity and capability and make it applicable to the work we do every day in the service of the public? So for me, the answer in terms of how to incorporate something is incorporated. I don't think it's a complex question to ask. Thank you.
I don't want to spoil your day, but I think it's very important to indicate that, I mean, she's provoking me here. I don't want us to go into discussion. As a professor of demography, I think I need to confirm your statistics that globally, because of Africa especially and Asia, our average ages are really on the lower side. So because of that, we need therefore to invest in the young one. There's what we call demographic dividends. And I think this is very common in the UN systems. We have worked around there. Demographic dividends means that you identify the gap which needs to be filled in terms of demographic numbers, the people where they are the majority. In this case, most of the people are in the younger age, which generally we call the dependent age groups. They are not necessarily working like you indicated, but I think what is important for us in terms of systems thinking is to give them education. This is the only time they can have the skills that they will need to use in the formal and informal sector. Let me draw an example for Zambia, from Zambia, because there I may not have anyone to dispute the facts as they are. That from 5 years ago, there was a pronouncement, and I think even UN heard of it, that Zambia is piloting free education. Now, this is a model which this year Zambia has moved on by not just putting it on the policies, it is now an act. It means that it is going into the constitution. It has already been approved. That when you are a Zambian and you are young, you have free education. And I think this is systems thinking. Because if you check what happened in Japan, you check what happened in UK, these are developed countries because of education. And we need, therefore, as Africa, understand that development will come from such issues as education. This is empowerment. And when you talk about health, I think which you have mentioned, they are systems that we need to put in place. Free medical services, especially for the older people, for the vulnerable. I think this is where we need to allocate our resources and we can move in that arena. I know that my guest here has some more one or two issues to deal with. Maybe we can entertain one question. And if someone would die if they don't ask the question, the second one we can tolerate, but one we can for now. The second one, we just make it if you die if you don't ask that question. Thank you. Someone with a question. We seem to be doing very well. We seem to be doing very well. So why don't we once again give my guest a big round of applause. Madam Serumaga, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
And enjoy your day.
Thank you.
We appreciate all the speakers. We'll come and visit.
Please do.
Just a token of appreciation from Amdin and NIPAM. Thank you so much.
Much appreciated. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. She will take leave with her team because I'm aware that they have a meeting at 10 hours, so we could excuse them. Thank you so very much. I now want to rely on technology. I hope you will manage technology. Are we there? We've been talking about digital, so it should not disappoint us when we need it. We move on now from in-person to online. And I'm not sure whether Madam Macholo, you are there?
I'm there, Prof.
Yeah, you are a bit faint.
A little bit faint.
I'm sure.
I'm there. I can hear you very well.
Fantastic. You
Are
sound
able to
like,
hear me well?
yes, you sound like you had the nice breakfast like I did.
I'll help.
Oh, my goodness. So this is Madam Gaone Manzini Macholo, all the way from Botswana, who was appointed the director of the Directorate of Public Service Management at the beginning of June 2022. And she has played a very pivotal role in advancing public sector transformation through the strategic formulation and implementation of progressive human capital policies, institutional reform, programs, leadership development frameworks, and governance systems that strengthen accountability, enhance operational efficiency, and promote responsive citizen-centered service delivery across the public service. In her recent standing, the achievements have included, among others, the review of the Public Service Act of 2008 that introduced several progressive measures, such as a new leave entitlements, such as adoption leave, commissioning parental leave, and paternity leave to assign and align with the Employment and Labor Relations Act and the ILO. This she has spearheaded with the resuscitation of the Public Service Bargaining Council, thereby strengthening social dialogue, labor relations, and employee welfare across public service. In this case, she has secured some scholarship for a 3-year radio program with to reach well over 130,000 public servants. Further, Madam Macholo has developed the Leadership Development Program, a strategic initiative designed to strengthen the leadership competencies for the public service officers that occupy leadership and managerial position so that we can effectively navigate the emerging governance and leadership challenges. Madam Macholo has also spearheaded the program that drives public service transformation through enhanced institutional performance, improved service delivery, and a stronger customer-centered culture, while at the same time simultaneously advancing effective, successful planning and ensure leadership continuity and long-term organizational sustainability. In her personal capacity, in the year of the Lord 2025, she launched a mentorship program aimed at identifying, nurturing, and developing young employees with leadership potential. The this initiative, initially and even now, seeks to equip emerging talent with the requisite knowledge, skills, values, and practical exposure to necessity to assume future leadership and management roles within the public service. This is the Manzini Macholo Guyana that I'm presenting to you. And you can see she's working with you because all of us here are in public service. And I don't think we are going to miss out as she now unrolls this discourse to us. And I want to invite all of you. I can see some of you are not with me. I don't want to leave any one of you outside this discussion. I know what you're doing is important, some of you, but for now, if you miss out this thing, you may not catch up with us, and you may misrepresent us when you go back to your countries. I therefore invite Madam Macholo to give us her thesis. Why don't we give her a big round of applause? Madam Macholo, the floor is up to you. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Prof. Thank you so much for that very nice introduction. I was listening and wondering, oh, is that me? But let me greet everybody and ask that may I be allowed to write on the protocol that has already been established. I'm so sad that I couldn't be with you there in Namibia. So the only thing I could do to remind myself of how it looks like was to put in the background on something that would remind me of Swakopmund, at least the ocean. We don't have it here. So that's how I'm feeling close to you, though you are very far from Swakopmund anyway. And I'm also very grateful to be given a chance to participate in this conference, though I am doing it from a distance. It's really an honor for me. And I'm very happy that though I'm not with you, I'll be able to establish networks I already have from the meeting that I had last night with a number of people. And I'm very happy that this works. And I want to congratulate Amdin for putting this together. For me, it is really a sure success. So thank you very much. Well done and congratulations in what you have already done. I look forward to years and years of progress through Amdin, and especially for our very own Africa. So may I say good morning to all of you. I hope I am loud enough to be heard by everybody. Am I? Okay. If I don't see anything, I'll assume that I can be heard. So there goes my presentation there about the resilience, or why we need to be resilient as a public service for sustainable development and climate adaptation. I'm quite happy that Ms. Sirumaga, I hope I didn't butcher her name too much, from UNDP, laid a very firm foundation. So our presentations or my discussion is probably going to sound similar, but I'm going to be more inclined to a case study approach, because she has already laid a foundation around the big picture. So one big issue for us is that, as she said, and I'm also regurgitating the same thing, that resilience is not about shocks of the now only. It's also about the future. It's also about how to prepare for it, so that when the shock comes, you know and are prepared to deal with it. As Africa, we do know that we're like the rest of the world, where climate shocks, health threats, physical pressures are a part of what we deal with. But unfortunately for us, we also have to deal with food insecurity, and also the digital disruption that the world is faced with. There's no option about whether we like it or not. The disruption of artificial intelligence is here, and we need to develop ways of either surviving it, adopting it, or making it work for us. And then secondly, we do know that as public institutions, we are expected to respond rapidly and effectively. When things happen today, our customers, who are the public, do not expect us to say we'll deal with it tomorrow. They're expecting us to know how to deal with it already. So this is why it's important to have ideas and plans of how to be resilient. And then lastly, as nations, we know that nations depend on public institutions. to be able to survive all of these shocks. And the important thing about being a leader of a public institution is that if we are not prepared, we will not enable the world to function properly, because we are the backbone of how the economy runs, just how everything runs. So we would like to see this as important as making mobile banking work. We do know that if you have to send money either to someone who's banked or the unbanked, you don't expect the system to say it is down. You expect the system to move and for money to arrive and for transactions to be conducted. This is just how we see the importance of resilience from our perspective. So just going to the definition a little bit, we're just saying it's important to be able to anticipate and respond and also recover from crisis. Someone has said it's not about bouncing back, it's also about anticipating. And we do know that when we do not manage anticipation, like we do in private sector, where your anticipation of crisis is measured through risk management, we're also expected to do it knowing that from an institutional perspective, if we don't, we will be found wanting and our nations will not progress. And then secondly, as a matter of continuity, we do know that people do not stop being born when there's a crisis, they don't stop dying, children don't stop becoming of age to go to school. So that's why it's important for us to know that shock does not stop life from moving on. It continues, and we're expected to be able to deliver services even through the shock. And then lastly, around being citizen-centered and agile as public institutions. We're saying this because if we're not agile and accountable, our systems will be wanting in terms of sustainability. They will not survive the shocks and they will not survive the future. So that's how, for us, we're saying the importance of resilience cannot be overemphasized. There are three elements that we want to look at in terms of this. We're saying ethical leadership, not only ethical, but competent leadership. Our finding is that most of what really puts us down is that if we achieve ethical leadership in terms of developing them and they're not competent, they will run after making systems work, but forget that they must also deliver results. We will have issues where people will say this program has gone very well when it has taken 10 years to produce, when in fact it should have taken only maybe 2 months or a year. And then public trust. Regrettably, public trust in many countries seems to be going down, but we live as public institutions to produce trust or to make sure that we are trusted so that our nations can do well and be competitive and as well be able to provide services to our people. And we do know that for the most part, when people talk about public institutions or talk about government, for the most part, they will mention them as those institutions that are not able to deliver results or those whose attitudes are far from what's desired. And then lastly, responsive governance. We do know that, as you have heard, sometimes systems are the ones that make it difficult for capable leaders to lead. And it is because our systems are not responsive. It takes forever. It is this bureaucracy that we have built very well over a long time that now needs to take a different shift to agility. So those are the three, can I say, elements that we believe must be looked at in relation to resilience. And then looking at why we say it's important for public institutions to be, can I say, trustworthy to deliver, and also to be able to have leaders that are competent and ethical. It's because we all know this. We, as the public institution leaders, drive the agenda of 2063 and the SDGs themselves. This, I'm just saying, I know you're already converted, it's something that you already know. I'm saying it just as a background to know, for us to know why we do this and why it needs to be at the back of our mind all the time. And then secondly, the one thing that will not go away from us is the fact that there are critical sectors that must not be compromised. These are none other than the health, education, agriculture, water, and social protection, amongst other things. We do know, especially in Africa, that health is something that we struggle with. But if our public institutions do not have the capability to survive the shocks that come through many things, obviously our health system will suffer. And also, obviously, we will not have a future if we do not build robust education systems that are able to be resilient. And then lastly, this one continues to be a problem everywhere. And many years ago, it didn't look like climate issues were a problem. But here in Botswana, it's either raining too much or there's a drought. Something that is a reality that we cannot run away from. And we do know that our resilience now lies on us being able to adapt and develop and make a part of our planning systems processes that will help us to adapt quickly when it rains too much and adapt quickly when we are faced with a drought. And then there are other things as well. Foot and mouth, for example, it's something that makes it worse in terms of us as nations, especially in the Southern Africa part, that have to deal with resilience. And then when we look at adaptation and governance, we're saying climate change for sure is reshaping all our priorities. I'm saying in Africa, but I know it's not only here. If you look at Europe and the Americas, things have just changed. And then as governments, we need to strengthen our preparedness policies. These are the things that I know you already run with, but it's mostly important for us because we seem to now be facing disaster after disaster. If you look at what we faced last year here in Botswana, there were floods. Imagine a country that is prone to drought, all of a sudden going through drought. And we're saying this is what is driving our resilience in terms of policy planning and implementation. And then lastly, long-term planning. We do know that we have talked about being resilient for a long time, but now it's a reality that we have now embedded into our National Development 12 and other processes that we're now using to plan for the future. It's stuff that we realize that if we don't talk about it, plan it, and implement it, we will be amongst those who are left behind as a nation. And then around human capital, because we're all human capital drivers here, at least through AMDIN, we're saying we will require digital analytical skills, first and foremost, because if we don't, the crisis that we are faced with that we must manage becomes difficult to manage. Why are we saying this? We are still quite manual in how we do things here in Botswana. We are driving the digital agenda with all the verve and all the energy that we can, because we realize that without it, analysis becomes a problem. Data in terms of decision making around handling crisis becomes a problem. Crisis management skills is what we have been having all the time, but we realize that now we need to raise the bar a bit, because the crises that we are facing either are intensifying or they are coming in different ways from what we've been used to from before. And then secondly, around leadership development and capability. I will talk to the project that we're now implementing around leadership development. What has become clear to us is that most of our leaders have been working for the public service for a very long time. And when we look at our data, our executives, just as an example, in the next 5 years, a good 50% of them will have retired. And we've asked ourselves, have we prepared those who are coming behind them to function with the same competence or even better for crisis management and also for the future? That's why the program that I'll speak to is very important. It's talking to leadership transformation around succession, around strengthening how we prepare our leaders. For the first time, we're going to be introducing mentorship and coaching in the public service. We realized that we need to do it through a show and tell process, not just certificates, because those people have done, those people have attended, but we don't always get the results that we want, because what they learn without the show and tell from our perspective doesn't always translate into the results that we want. And then lastly, that our public sector reforms must also focus on things that will help us invest intentionally more than we have been doing on innovation, because we're facing unique problems, and there's not much we can look to from our past that we can use to decide how the future we should look like. So that's why this investment is very important for us. Now, in terms of the transformative initiatives that we've embarked on, I've spoken to the digital transformation initiatives. This is where we want to link our national ID to everything that we do. We do know that, especially with Namibia, we already use the national ID instead of passport, or as an option to the passport, or an alternative to the passport, to go through our borders. That is one, but there are many others that we are putting in place to make sure that we can become resilient and we can become future ready. And then I don't know whether Edward would like to say something in there, because my slides have moved from the center to it, but that's okay. And then strengthening management of human resources. We also see that how we have done it, again, has been too certificate and degree driven instead of skills and competence. So we want to make sure that intentionally we drive skills development and something that is tangible that we can see in how people will manage the public service. And then performance management and accountability frameworks. What this means is not your normal performance management of individuals. It's looking at what we plan in terms of our national development plan and driving together with our unions this time around a performance management process that would look at performance of government as a whole, so that we drive our national plan to a certain or higher level of performance that we have been. We have seen that over the years, a lot of what we would plan in one performance or one development plan will get carried over in large amounts, or maybe in large percentages, that we want to be a thing of the past. So it is something that we've put on the table with our unions to make sure that as Botswana, if we think we have been performing, we believe that it was just a drop in the ocean. We must do more and must get to much higher levels. And then regional and international collaboration or partnerships. We see this more important than before. You would know that as we speak now, Botswana and South Africa and also Zimbabwe are facing, can I call it a catastrophe of foot and mouth? For us, the foot and mouth disease is very serious because we depend on beef for exports and for just normal living of our nation here. And this collaboration has become even more important because for the first time, South Africa is also facing the same disease, and also Namibia is not, and they're working hard to make sure that they don't get to the same situation that we're in. So it needs all the countries, ourselves, Zimbabwe, South Africa, and also Zambia, because we also have a border with Zambia, to work together to make sure that this collaboration goes beyond paper. It actually can be seen in how we prevent this, making sure that we raise whatever needs to be raised, be it resources, be it fences, to the nth degree of what it will take to collaborate together to make sure that we survive this catastrophe. And then the last one, I think, is the one that all Africa and the whole world is driving around: data-driven decision-making. I've spoken to it through digitization and making sure that we are able to collect and make our decisions on real-life, real-time data. So those are the initiatives that I'd like to speak to. I've already spoken to one around investing in people, where we're saying, everything, like John Maxwell will say, rises and falls on leadership. If we don't develop our leaders to the right level of competence, so that we transition from speak to action and results, then we know that we would be able to survive the shocks, because we will be able to innovate and anticipate all of these things. And lastly, our call to action. We're saying, together as institutions, together as co-laborers, together as people who are entrusted with changing our Africa, shall we build adaptive institutions that will reform these rigid bureaucratic systems that have worked in the past but may not be relevant anymore. The bureaucracy is needed, but the rigidity will not help us. And also to encourage innovation and agility, because we do know of problems, but it doesn't help us when, again, we speak about them, plan about them, find resources to deal with them, but there's no activity and action that will lead to change. And then secondly, a call to action to invest in public sector capability. Capability, once again, not of papers, but to act, to make sure that what we speak can immediately be seen as action and can also immediately be seen as results. We do know that we're all driving very big ships in terms of government machinery, but we do not believe it is impossible to, in our small ways and big ways, make this happen where we sit. And then thirdly, again, mainstream the climate adaptation into governance. We've done this as Africa in many things. We've done it, we've mainstreamed many things. We believe that very strongly that if we do this well, we will see it in our integration of climate risks into our planning and budgeting more than we have been doing, because the realities that we are facing need to be addressed vigorously and quickly. And then the collaborative governance, we can't speak more than we have spoken at country level and also internally. And not only at country level or maybe regional level, and international level, but also to involve ourselves with other areas or other regions, be the Americas, be Asia, China, and what have you. These are the languages that we already talk about or we already speak, but what's needed now is to see action. And lastly, to reposition ourselves as the public service as part of the national infrastructure, where we're saying infrastructure is no longer about a mortar and brick and what have you, but we ourselves are the infrastructure of action and activity. So on that note then, may I say thank you very much for your time. May I just pause here and hear from you in terms of your responses. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much. Your clapping was not convincing. Can you try it again? Thank you.
What was my what?
Thank you so very much. We appreciate.
Thank you.
She is emphasizing quite a number of points that we have already had, including digitalization of systems. I think ethical leadership is very critical here, that we must do the best to be fair, to be justice in all our, to conduct justice in all our endeavors as such, so that we can have public trust. I think the other elements are very clear also here. She has talked about collaboration, and I think for us, this is germane when we are at a regional level and the continental level like this. The issue of collaboration are very germane. And it means that we need to learn one from the other so that we don't start things from the scratch when we could already have some lessons from other sisterhood nations and countries or projects. She emphasized on climate adaptation, and climate adaptation would differ from one country to another. Generally, you find that probably you have too much rain or you don't have rains. So if you have too much rains, what do you do with the water? To prepare for the following time when you don't have much water. We have to talk about planning. Now, the problem is that it's like I'm speaking to myself. That's where my problem is. I am speaking to myself. Hey, a number of colleagues here are going to misquote us because they are not following what we are saying. If your neighbor, by chance, you can see they are sleeping, that is the wrong place. This is not a bedroom. If your neighbors are sleeping, this is not a bedroom. We didn't bring blankets here, I think. I wanted to make a point on planning. Just about a month or so, I was privileged to be in what we call China, Africa, eminent persons. Now, that gave a lot of impetus to planning. Now, that meeting, like I remember in Zambia, I was privileged. I was among the two that were invited for China eminent persons, whatever they meant by eminent, but I was there. Now, one thing which we saw there when we are discussing at that level is that China does not end at short and middle term planning. China plans for centuries. They actually plan for centuries. They already have plans for the next 50 to 100 years. That is China. 50 to 100 years. So what that means is that they are not living for now, they are living for the future. And in our systems, I think she emphasized the issue of planning. We need to therefore look ahead and see what we can do in planning. I want, therefore, with these reflections, invite you to make your own suggestions and make your observations and clarifications from Madam Macholo before we can hand over to another team. Thank you. Do I see any? I see one there. I see two there. I see three. 1, 2, 3. Then 1, 2, 3. Then we shall end the session because we don't. And those colleagues, make your comment very specific so that we don't misunderstand you if you take a lot of meandering. Just go straight. What do you think and what are your suggestions so that we can dwell on that as opposed to quoting one or two quotings again. Thank you.
Thank you, Program Director, and thank you also for the presenter for those perspectives. I have two questions. One is that the UNDP supported a climate action plan for the youth in Botswana, and there was a declaration that was made, but data seem to suggest that the youth who are entrepreneurs and those who have developed skills are severely underutilized in provision of services to the public sector. And this may be also a problem, an African problem, because it looks like we don't even, we encourage youth to be entrepreneurs, but when they deliver services, we don't pay them on time. That's the one. The other one is not necessarily to the speaker, but to us who are here. The question is, when are we going to declare corruption a pandemic of continental interest? Because we think about climate and all that, but we have a serious problem of accountability and corruption, which is a continuing disaster. It's actually assumed disaster proportions. When can we declare it a disaster? And what interventions are we dealing with, especially from the context of MDIs? Thank you.
Thank you very much. To the presenter online, I'll zoom straight to the call to action.
You could introduce yourself, thank you.
I'm Patrick Mabuta from South Africa, attached to the University of the Land, University of South Africa. Thank you. Zooming straight into the presentation under the call for action. The presenter indicated that there's a need to build adaptive institutions. What I wanted to check, did they ever consider indigenous knowledge system to be embedded in the disaster technology and master plan that they are trying to come up with? Because most of the time, indigenous knowledge systems has got mitigating factors, especially on most of the disasters, depending on the type of disaster that has ensued at a particular time. And then number two, what I've noticed is that most African countries do not have a master plan, and most provinces do not have a plan for disaster. The same thing will happen to municipalities. If you check under their budget and their plan, they don't have a plan for disaster. They wait for disaster to be declared, and once the disaster has been declared, resources are going to be stolen, because what happens is government will channel all the money into that particular disaster. Instead of it being implemented, the money is being stolen. I wanted to check with them in Botswana. What approach are they taking to inhibit such an anomaly? Thank you.
And I'm sure the professor coming will not maybe ask, will just give us comment because we don't have time. And maybe one comment. I'm not restricting you, Prof, but I'm just urging that we could move. Thank you.
No, wonderful. Thank you so much, Prof. Mine is a simple one. Very quickly, the complexities, around bureaucracies, and Madam Macholo has made it very clear that with a call to action, that there's an area, obviously, that needs to be shaken up. So the question really that perhaps we need to think about is how do we disrupt, those bureaucratic, challenges that are confronting our own countries. Because much as we are anticipatory, understanding all these kinds of issues that are actually confronting us in the environment, we simply find it very difficult to tackle these bureaucracies.
Thank you so much. Since the questions are related, Madam Macholo, I would encourage you to maybe just give us some highlights within the next 2 or so minutes so that we can wrap it up and we move to another session. Thank you so much, as you are able to do that, Madam Macholo. Thank you.
The first speaker, I didn't get his name. Yes, I didn't get his name, but I think he was talking about how we were able to support youth in terms of the, entrepreneurship, and now we're not giving them a chance and not even paying them well. I think we want to admit that to a certain extent, sometimes, yes, the youth don't get a chance, but we realize that it is in us to help them to be able to know how to deliver on time and to be able to develop brands that will help them to be recognized. But in terms of the support, that has not come to a standstill. It still continues, but we realize that perhaps we need to help them develop a lot more agility and also strength of, strength of brand, so that what they produce doesn't just end in the air. They can produce something that is sustainable, but we take it very seriously. And then the next one, let me speak to what Rep. Patrick Mabuta from the University of South Africa said. Have we considered indigenous knowledge system in planning for disaster? Let me answer the one that is speaking to whether money gets stolen when we have disasters. In our area, we do have a disaster management department. In fact, it falls under the Ministry for State President. So any disaster that comes, we have a disaster preparedness teams that will help us to plan forward, to anticipate, and also to be able to involve communities like these floods that we're talking about, the foot and mouth that we're talking about. In terms of indigenous systems, what I can speak to confidently is making sure that the communities themselves are invited and asked to be a part of the solution, as part of change management and also as part of implementing the changes. So in terms of money being stolen, I don't think we steal that much. The part where we stole perhaps might have been during the COVID time, because that one took us by surprise, the same way it took the world by surprise. And then lastly, around whether we will be able to disrupt the bureaucracy and how we want to do it. From what's working for us right now is causing a disruption through digitalization. We are big now on process re-engineering. So it is helping us to remove the waste that comes with very long processes, most of the time unnecessary. So we believe when we look at it, maybe 3 years from now, the plans that we have put down around what to change and what to improve, we'll be able to see great results. I mean, there's things that we already saw where we had a process that took 90 days. And when we embarked on it in terms of process re-engineering, they were able to cut it down to 35 days. For us, it was already a win. So we believe that is one way where we can achieve this disruption very quickly. Thank you. I believe the corruption one say is for all of us. It's a pandemic that must be addressed exactly like that, as a pandemic and as a disease.
Madam Macholo, I think you have made a point that whilst people may want to steal you have taken preventive measures. And that sits very well with Zambia also in terms of disaster management. And for us, even attempted, those that have attempted to steal, like maybe could be exam paper in our institution, they are in prison right now. You may know, even those that were stealing in Zambia, some of them, they may have been your friends at very high levels. All of them, you find them in prison right now as I'm talking. So we must be very deliberate. We must be very deliberate. We have taken quite a number in prison in Zambia, and some of them are in courts. And I think this is a point of corruption. We have to have zero corruption, tolerance in corruption. And even in our institutions, we must be very, very clear so that we can use the resources ably. I think these are matters that we need to integrate in our systems as we move on. I think my guests have been wonderful. I just want to ask that you give them a big round of applause once again. I leave this floor.
Thank you.
Those that wanted to sleep now can sleep. I go. Thank you.
Please don't sleep. Thank you very much, Prof. I think Prof and the presenters deserve another round of applause. Thank you very much. We are a bit behind time, but I believe the presentations were worth listening to. If we go back to our program, we have two presentations slated for the breakaway sessions. And before we break for tea, I just want to check in whether Lino Ika is around. The presenter for the role of clients charter in enhancing accountability in selected Ugandan public university seems not around. And then under the building institutional capacity and professionalizing public service, we have Musa, Kuba, Gerald, and Mavis Shugwede. Are we around, available here? Not here. Edward Nondo? Yes, Nondo is in our mix, it's around. It seems that we have only one presentation for the breakaway sessions. And this presentation will take place here. We are not going to breakaway rooms. The presentation will be here. And I want to ask for your concurrence again. And for the sake of time, and I want us to be within our program today, if we can give Nondo 10 minutes to do his presentation, and then we'll then break for tea and only come back for the, conclusion and close of the conference. Are we in agreement that we give Nondo 10 minutes? Mr. Nondo, it's your floor. Yes, Mr. Nondo's sessions was going to be chaired by Madam Kakololo, Rebecca, and Jobet Tawana as the rapporteur, but I believe what we can do now is just to listen to the presentations, and they will manage the questions and comments, and then we end the sessions. If we can do that in that way. Good.
Do you have a presentation? It was being projected here. Okay.
All right, while we are connecting with the presentations of Dr. Nondo, I would like to invite once again Prof. Malungo just to say 2 words about Dr. Nondo. Who is Dr. Nondo? Prof.
For the sake of those that may not know, Dr. Nondo, he comes from Zambia. He's a principal lecturer with National Institute of Public Administration, NIPA, and his immediate past head of department, you know, those are rotational issues. He has served his term. He just moved on from being head of department. He is part of the Secretariat for the Southern African region for AMDIN. So he comes with a vast knowledge, both from the public and also from private development partnerships, where he has worked for more than 20 years. Thank you so much. Let's meet Dr. Nondo as such.
Thank you, Professor Malungo. And I think that I would like to say and welcome to my presentation. I'm grateful, Prof. Malungo. This presentation is delivered. Yeah, so this presentation that I'm delivering today at the second AMDIN annual conference here in Namibia seeks to outline evidence from the Zambia Public Service Change Management Framework
to argue that Africanizing change management is a methodological issue and not mere rhetoric, evidence of which is achieved through embedding experiential learning theory into formal reform protocols. Let me start by saying the outline to this presentation follows the problem, context, the research gap, why this study matters, the theoretical framework under which the study is embedded, methodology, findings, outcomes, as well as the impact there. Then we'll go into discussion, then conclusions. The outline, therefore, signals a rigorous research paper, not a practitioner reflection. It is a promise for empirical data, theoretical grounding, transferable policy recommendations throughout. The problem central to the study is framed through Andrew 2013 writings on African governments often adopting the visible form of modern governance, that is in terms of structures, policies, laws, without really developing a functional substance or creating, therefore creating capability traps that persist across successive reform cycles. 3 structural causes here are identified. And the first one is focus on single looping compliance, ideally premised on imported new public management models, reinforced external prescriptions with no adaptive learning built in. Reforms correct errors within the same governing assumptions rather than questioning those assumptions. In terms of blueprint fidelity, reforms are just on adherence to prescribed processes, not on conceptual appropriateness or measured outcomes. This creates perverse outcomes for compliance over performance. The other structural cause on passive implementers, where the frontline public service workers are expected from reform and are excluded from reform design without co-ownership, and so lacks reform in terms of buy-in that is needed for sustainable implementation. It is therefore important that framing, by calling this a learning failure, this study opens space for an experiential learning solution, the diagnosis which directly determines proposed remedy. In terms of the gap, really, we see that is premised on 2 key research questions. How does the Zambia public service change management framework operationalize experiential learning across different public sector institution contexts? And secondly, what evidence exists that experiential learning embedded change management produces measurable improvements in reform ownership and implementation outcomes? I'll jump into the theoretical framework there. And this draws 4 complementary theoretical frameworks that collectively explain why and how the Zambia Public Service Change Management Framework works. And I look at the COBS experiential learning, where the foundational framework occurs through a 4-stage cycle. And you'll notice that the first is the concrete experience that you see hands-on and piloting a reform. Then there's observation, where reviewing and interpreting the experience comes in. Then after that, we see conceptualization comes in with experimentation. That's basically on the COBS experiential learning theory. Basically, we also run through another framework, which is the Agiris and SCON. Then we have the one that I alluded on, Andrews, through to the Ubuntu maxim. The maxim of Ubuntu, in my language, will explicitly talk about that umuntu, muntu, bantu tuli bantu. And that's how I would actually bring it out in my language. In terms of the Zambia Public Service Change Management Framework architecture, using the lens of the learning cycle and practice, we see that at the center is the learning architecture itself, which, as I earlier alluded to, there is experience that that the study sees across a 90 days pilot in districts. Thereafter, you see the observation there that is reflective and going into abstract conceptualization through to active implementation. Methodology. In terms of methodology, we see how that though the critical point in the architecture makes learning a structural requirement, not a cultural preference, this is how the Zambia Public Service Change Management Framework moves from rhetoric to method. The study then employs rigorous quantitative study design involving a multiple case study of 5 institutions there, and then essentially we have 3 methods there for ensuring that 15 semi-structured interviews were conducted during that period, and 27 papers analyzed, among others, including some workshop observations. The findings, looking at those 5 institutions, and also using the perspective, the dimensions that were used in terms of experience, okay? We can see experience there, we can see observation there, conceptualization, as well as implementation there. So these 5 institutions have had all these findings based on those parameters. But particularly, if we take the Ministry of Mines and Minerals Development, artisanal mining, as well as small-scale mining, learning circles were established in 3 provinces, with the observation made monthly in terms of licensing reviews, Then conceptualization follows context-appropriate regulations there, as well as the small-scale licensing under the issue of formal licensing program. I will try and skip that by just talking to that as one of the studies, but maybe would wish to perhaps set a tone on the Zambia Revenue Authority there in terms of digital tax enrollment rate at 45 and 92, and these can be demonstrated by the results that we see throughout there in terms of performance before and after the Zambia Public Service Change Management Framework implementation. We see the Revenue Authority there in terms of tax enrollments to 45, then 84% by Smart Zambia in terms of satisfaction. NAPSA there. We also have the formalization of artisanal and small-scale mining in Zambia there, whereas the Lusaka City Council local authority also gives us the issue of rates collection moving from 34 to 58. The second theme that focuses on enhanced reform ownership also dives into issues of why improvements are key, and we see that the co-creation of frontline staff shaping the solutions also comes to the fore. We do see a pilot involvement there, feedback loops, and peer validation as well. Bridging the gap in the policy implementation is another theme that seeks to relate or bring together the policy design, and also frontline delivery. And it is also said that previously policies were designed in Lusaka and sent to provinces. Nobody asked frontliners whether they were workable or not. Now the framework requires us to test policies in small pilots before national rollout. I will skip that and go to the focus in terms of discussing how Africanizing public service change management framework is basically methodical and not mere rhetoric. So indigenous languages will help us there translate documents and carry out the renaming of the frameworks, but also to talk about the method of how now the change is designed and tested. Again, premised on the Ubuntu maxim there, as well as the COBS experiential learning theory in terms of protocol. And we see there how that reform fatigue obviously points to the issue of reform ownership. Let me talk about policy implications for Africa. Maybe even before that, it would be good to look at these parameters, the way they've been segmented in terms of, aligning these policy implications for Africa with the African Union Agenda 2063, as well as the Public Service Charter. For Zambia, it implies that the need to legislate pilot phases and after action reviews in the Public Service Management Act, as well as establishing a national Zambia Public Service Change Management Learning repository in our digitized systems. Also integrate the Smart Zambia infrastructure with the framework learning platforms. In terms of other African states, because we are seeking to Africanize the concept into other African states, conduct institution audits before this reform design, also engage national public administrations, MDIs as author to anchor these institutions, adapt and not adopt by contextualizing principles to local culture. Then for AMDIN and the regional bodies, we would like to see that there is establishment of Pan-African experiential learning network for public service reform, also continental benchmarking framework aligned to the AU agenda. And I know for NIPA, for example, it's already occurring where benchmarking starts with other MDIs such as the NIPAM, Kenya School of Government, and so on. But for now, we also need to ensure we see the commissions such as SADC, Southern Africa, in Southern Africa, then ECOWAS in West Africa, then we also see here the East African Commission. I have academic contributions to the study there. Conclusions and key recommendations. Those are also premised based on both the Zambian context there, African AMDIN there, African states, and on the researcher side, longitudinal impact studies for over 5 to 10 years. And so I would like to end by saying that transformative public service leadership begins not with a model that is imported from abroad, but with the courage to trust our own institutions that will be able to carry out this. I submit and set time for discussion. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much, Dr. Nondo, for the presentation. Transformative models that can change institutions are not those that we have imported, but those that we have created from within institutions. We are going to take 2 or 3 comments, questions, contributions to Doc's presentation. Questions, the floor is open. Dr. Peterson there.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. The transformation doc projects or initiatives tend to be affected by the short-termism of politics. And the short-termism implies that there you are having elections that could disrupt a transformation that was intended to be beyond terms of elections. How then do we ensure that when we embark on such transformation models, it is beyond the short-term politics?
Thanks, Doc. Any other Question, contribution? The challenge of being the last presenter. Is it the challenge or the benefits also? Yes, Mr. Chaka, can you go ahead?
I must first apologize because I was actually a little bit outside. But then I'm still going to ask because the title itself is very exciting. I'm also in the space of change management. When I have followed the African ways of changing organization, actually one of the framework is strategic planning. Strategic planning is a framework on how you change organizations. I have followed Africanizing. There is a particular gentleman in Malawi. His name is Malunga, taking strategic planning as an African, the African way. And also, you follow the African way where you use proverbs, for instance. But then, my conclusion, maybe we have come to a conclusion that sometimes these people that we call as foreigners and us may be actually very same. For instance, a model you call maturity model. Maturity model, they have it. We also have it. So in your studies in these kind of things, perhaps in one way or another, I think somehow, could be some synergies in how we look at the world. Thank you very much. It's my comment.
Thank you. Doc, can you take the floor to react to the questions?
Thank you. I didn't really, Johnny, I didn't really get the last part of your question.
Thanks. So what I meant was that we embark on transformations quite often, but it tends to be disrupted by the short-term politics. And they become short-term because you have the next elections to worry about as a politician. So political actors will then have their own objectives and intentions and time frames. And yet, from public administration perspective, we plan beyond those periods because we want to make impact. So in the case of the transformation model we are talking about, how do we ensure that we accommodate that short-termism without it being a disruption?
So maybe let me just start by saying, in the African continent, one of the problems that we continue to face is how we manage transition of governments, especially in the wake of democracy. But I think that the assurance that we have in all these governments is such that we have the technocracy in place, even when these successive governments go. And that's why it becomes very important that when we come up with strategies to transform the way we demonstrate public service, we ensure that there is stability embedded in the public service that exists even long after the governments have changed. Suffice to say that at the moment we do know that the bureaucracy or what you may call public administration, faces basically two challenges. Globalization, which actually stems from what we are talking about, borrowing concepts or internalizing concepts for our use, but at the same time we have an enlightened citizenry. And the enlightened citizenry is the one that now questions why we have to stick to those theorems, why we have to stick to what is in the past, even when politicians come through and go. But public service remains to provide that service which is professional and at the same time what I would call citizen-centric, because it's looking into the needs or the affairs of the people, citizens that much needs that service. Thank you.
Very good. Seems we don't have any other hands up for contributions or for inputs. Please join me to thank Dr. Nondo. He's so special for this conference because he's the last presenter of the conference. Huh? So he deserves another round of applause. Thank you so much, Dr. Nondo. Thank you very much. It's almost 11:30. I would like us to take a break for tea. We go for tea, and we are back 11:45. 11:45, we are all back, and then we will then move to the closer of our conference. Thank you.
And as we are now concluding the program today, we are delighted to inform you that we have planned for a tour, a city tour across Windhoek. This tour will be today after lunch. And to begin with, we will be passing by the State House, which is the official residence of the President of Namibia. And then from there, we will proceed to the Parliament Gardens, one of the oldest and historic buildings in Windhoek. And then our next stop will be the Independence Memorial Museum. This one tells a story of the Namibian liberation struggle. So this is also a good element or a good place to visit. And then we will also take you to the Heroes Acre. The Heroes Acre is about 10 to 15 kilometers outside of Windhoek. It's not very far, so we'll take you there as well. And then lastly, we'd like to take you to the Kapana Street Market, where you'll have fried meat over the fire, which is also one of the Namibian experiences which you must have before you leave Windhoek. And then afterwards, if there is still time, we'll take you to the Grove Mall. It is a very new mall, and for those of you who are interested in buying something from Namibia to take home, that will be the last stop. So with that, I think we are done with the information about the tour. I do not know if you have any questions around the tour. Is it clear? Maybe by a show of hands, so that we can know how many cars to prepare. How many people are interested in taking the tour? Okay. All right, that is a good indication. Thank you very much. Okay, next up, I would like to call Dr. Buti Salom, who is going to take us through the conference communique for the past 3 days, including today. So can we call Dr. Buti to the podium? Sorry, I was just informed by Dr. Murangi. This QR code is having the post-evaluation questionnaire for the conference. We encourage you to kindly scan the code so that you can take the questionnaire, and it will give us a good guidance of where we need to improve and so forth. So please help us to complete the questionnaire.
Thank you very much, Ms. Asirwa, for giving me this opportunity to communicate, give the communique, official communique for the second AMDIN Conference. So I feel so privileged to be invited to the stage. I have been inviting people on the stage during the whole conference. Now it's my time. Thank you so much. During the conference, there were presentations from different presenters, scene settings and papers that we presented. And then we have recorded all the presentations. What I'm going to do now is a brief of the presentations that we have transcribed. However, the full communique will be shared with AMDIN Exco for refinement, and only after the Exco refinement, that the communique will be shared with everyone. AMDIN, in collaboration with Namibia Institute of Public Administration and Management, successfully convened the second annual AMDIN Conference from 18 to 20 May 2026 at the NIPAM campus, Windhoek, Namibia. The conference was held under the theme Transformative Public Service Leadership for Sustainable Development and Inclusive Growth in Africa. The summit served as a critical nexus for the continental policy alignment and institutional renewal. The conference deliberated on the following thematic areas: governance, accountability, and ethical leadership in the African public service, building institutional capacity and professionalizing public service, digital transformation and innovation for the public sector renewal, inclusive public service, gender, youth, and vulnerable groups in leadership and development, partnerships, regional integration, and collaborative governance for Agenda 2063, and resilient public services for sustainable development and climate adaptation. The conference brought together around 150 participants who attended in person, including more than 60 international delegates representing public administration institutions, government leaders, development partners, academia, private sector innovators, and governance practitioners across Africa and beyond. In addition, 430 participants followed the discussions and presentations online via the live stream platforms offered by the Namibian Broadcasting Corporation and the Ministry of Information and Communication Technologies. 50 abstract papers were received, of which 76% were presented, including those delivered through virtual platforms, reflecting the growth centrality of digital participation in continental policy dialogue. The Prime Minister's keynote address established a decisive paradigm shift, framing public service as a sacred trust and positioning institutional quality rather than mineral wealth as the definitive currency of national development. The Prime Minister mandated a transition toward economic sovereignty and localized resources processing, positioning public servants as ambassadors of hope, tasked with making Africa the tree of life. The AMDIN president reinforced this mandate, celebrating the African mosaic of linguistic and cultural diversity as a strategic asset in the pursuit of the Africa we want under Agenda 2063. The key observations and the strategic findings that emerged from the conference Across all thematic tracks, delegates identified the following systemic challenges facing our institutions. A persistent output versus impact measurement deficit, PSTI, continued tracking success by number of trainees and training hours rather than by measurable organizational and behavioral change. Fragmented digital architectures, government information systems, including e-recruitment, human resources, finance, and learning management platforms, operates in silos, preventing the data exchange required for effective governance. Brain drain of young professionals. The failure of public institutions to adapt to the preferences and leadership expectations of the Generation Y workforce is accelerating the loss of the continent's highest potential talent. A widening lag between constitutional and policy reform on the one hand, and the pace of technological advancement on the other, creating governance vacuums that is artificial intelligence, if unregulated, will fill by default. The 81% versus 19% artificial intelligence paradox, while 81% of PSTI leaders report awareness of artificial intelligence potential, only 19% have operationalized any substantive AI capability, confirming that artificial intelligence preparedness remains largely conceptual rather than operational. Strategic resolutions and actionable directives. To accelerate the implementations of Agenda 2063, the African Continental Free Trade Area and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the conference delegates, management development institutes, and the strategic partners hereby resolve to institutionalize modern capability frameworks, formally adopt and adapt localized competency and behavioral frameworks, including the rise and deaths models. Moving public service training beyond theoretical instruction toward measurable governance outcomes, and professionalizing must be anchored in statutory law, linking MDI certification directly to civil service deployment and promotion. Modernize pedagogical delivery and diversify funding. Bypass traditional physical constraints by embracing micro-credentials, stakeable training pathways, and asynchronous digital learning. Cultivate sovereign artificial intelligence and digital resilience. Governments and MDIs must co-create localized artificial intelligence, police tutor systems, secure sovereign data architectures, and mandate comprehensive artificial intelligence literacy and predictive modeling training for all public sector officials. Transition to intergenerational leadership models. MDIs must redesign senior management curricula to foster cognitive flexibility, emotional intelligence, and coaching, and democratic-oriented leadership, ensuring the public sector becomes an employer of choice. Eradicates systemic silos through interoperability. E-recruitments and digitalized human resource practices must be expanded across the continent to structurally eliminate nepotism, restore citizen trust in public institutions, and establish mandatory verification dashboards. Mandate disability inclusive leadership targets. Enact funded legal enforceable reasonable accommodation standards within public service institutions. Establish a continental disability inclusive leadership fellowship program for higher potential visually impaired public servants grounded in the UN CRPD and the African Union Disability Protocol. Transition from reactive to anticipatory governance. Institutionalize time series forecasting and machine learning-driven predictive analytics within government planning and social protection systems. Forge strategic implementation partnerships. Establish a sustainable continental framework, including the Strong Nations for Africa program, for regular policy dialogue, collaborative research, and the exchange of best practices among African MDIs, the private sector, and the global development agencies. Management development institutes are reminded that they are not merely training centers, they are catalysts for change. The conference extends its profound appreciation to the government and the people of the Republic of Namibia for their exemplary hospitality, and to the Right Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Chitunga Ereya Ngurare, for his foundational keynote address. The leadership of the African Management Development Institutes Network and the Namibia Institute of Public Administration and Management in particular, Dr. Harold Murangi, are commended for their exceptional stewardship. Gratitude is further extended to all partner institutions and sponsor organizations, including the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, the African Association for Public Administration and Management, the Chantel Academy of Governance, the African Union Commission, the MTN Group, Anglo-Americans, and Papakew's Motors, whose support was instrumental to the success of these proceedings. All scholars, policymakers, practitioners, delegates, and organizing committees are commended for the intellectual rigor and commitment with which they have advanced the cause of transformative public service leadership across the African continent. There were also some memorable quotes and sound bites from the conference. Public office is a sacred trust and should never be a source of service enrichment, but a mirror through which our people see themselves. That was by the Right Honorable Dr. Ngurare, Prime Minister of the Republic of Namibia. The nations that truly progress are those that succeed in transforming their underground resources into the quality of institutions above the ground. That was from Mr. Tompola Muke, President of AMDIN. MDIs are not merely training centers. They are catalysts for change. From Ms. Evelyn Zimba Naris, in her opening ceremony of the conference, and she's the vice chair of the NIPAM Governing Council. If language is excluded, if communities are excluded, then our economy is excluded. From Vukani Mtinto MTN Group. The barriers confronting persons with visual impairments are not natural phenomena. They are institutional choices accumulated over time that can be unmade with sufficient political will. That was from Linus Shimonga in her presentation. That was the end of the communique. Like I said, all the presentations and discussions were captured. We also have individuals and institutions that are interested in the papers that we presented during the conference. We are going to create a QR code where we are going to load all the presentations. And we will then submit this to the Secretariat, and the Secretariat will make it available to everyone. In addition to that, we are also going to create another QR code. That QR code, we are going to load all the pictures that were taken during the conference, from the airport to the Groove Mall where we are going to end with the tour. All the pictures, we are going to load them there. There will be thousands and thousands. And we are also inviting everyone who has taken pictures to load those pictures into that QR code. One friend of mine was telling me that when you have a wedding and you are the bride, you have a photographer who is hired to do that. But he only focuses at some points of taking pictures. But there will also be invitees who come with different phones, which takes different, take pictures from different angles. So, and most of the time, the brides miss to have those moments, pictures. So what we are saying is that we are inviting all of you, from whatever angle you take the pictures during the conference, here in the venue, outside the venue, in the restaurant, in the tour, from the airport, wherever, please load those pictures into the QR code that will be made available so that all of us will have then access to the pictures. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Buti, for that brief summary of the conference communique. We do take note that the final document will be vetted by the EXCO of AMDIN, and then it will be shared with all of us. Up next, I would like to invite the AMDIN President, Mr. Tombola Muke, to give us the closing remarks. Mr. Muke.
Madame Loïs Mouloubé, secrétaire permanent de la division de gestion du service public de la République de la Zambie.
Mrs. the Secretary of the Republic of Zambia, I forgot the full name. I'm sorry.
Loïs Mouloubé.
Ah, Loïs Mouloubé, okay.
Monsieur le directeur exécutif de NIPAM, Dr Mourangi.
The Executive Director of NIPAM, Dr Mourangi.
Madame la secrétaire générale de l'AMDIN, Findil Mkwanazi.
Mrs. Secretary General of AMDIN Pindile Mkwanazi.
Distingués invités, mesdames et messieurs, chers collègues et amis d'AMDIN.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and friends of AMDIN.
Après 3 jours de travaux, je voudrais vous féliciter. Je voudrais d'abord vous féliciter.
After 3 days of hard work, I would like first of all to congratulate all of you, dear delegates.
Car survivre à un programme AMDIN demande manifestement de solides compétences en gouvernance, mais aussi en endurance.
Because surviving an AMDIN program clearly requires strong governance skills, but also endurance.
En effet, ces 3 journées de travail ont été intenses, enrichissantes, mais intenses.
Indeed, these 3 days of hard work have been intense, enriching, and also intense.
Et ceux qui espéraient profiter un peu de beaux paysages de Windhoek ont dû se contenter de dizaines de magnifiques PowerPoint qui ont jalonné nos échanges dans ces beaux cadres du NIPAM.
And those who opt to enjoy some of Windhoek beautiful sceneries had to be contented with dozens of magnificent PowerPoint representation that punctuated our discussion in this beautiful setting of NIPAM.
Mais plus sérieusement, je voudrais vous remercier pour la qualité des échanges, pour l'esprit des fraternités africaines et pour cette belle énergie collective qui a régné depuis le début de cette conférence.
More seriously, I would like to thank you for the quality of the discussions, for the spirit of African fraternity, and for the wonderful collective energy that has prevailed since the beginning of this conference.
Cette énergie a été belle au-delà des histoires du docteur Mourangi, qui a été l'employeur du Premier ministre et qui est devenu aujourd'hui son employé.
This energy has been even remarkable and beautiful, transcending the stories of Dr. Mourangi, who was the Prime Minister's employer and then is now his employee.
Et parlant du Premier ministre qui est passé de l'employé du docteur Mourangi à Premier ministre, c'est certainement ces genres de sauts qualitatifs que nous souhaitons à l'Afrique. Et c'est précisément pour cela que notre réseau AMDIN existe.
And speaking of the Prime Minister, who went from being an employee of Dr. Mourangi to Prime Minister, this is certainly the kind of qualitative leap which we wish for Africa, and that is precisely the reason why AMDIN exists.
D'ailleurs, notre réseau lui-même est sur cette même dynamique.
Moreover, our network itself is following this same dynamic.
C'est dans cette lancée que nous avons signé, comme vous l'avez suivi, en avril dernier à New York, un MOU entre AMDIN et l'UNDESA.
It is in this spirit that we signed, as you might know, last April in New York, a memorandum of understanding between AMDIN and the UNDESA.
Cet accord constitue une avancée majeure.
This agreement represents a major step forward.
Il témoigne de la reconnaissance internationale de notre réseau et ouvre la voie à une coopération renforcée pour soutenir le développement durable et la croissance inclusive en Afrique.
It demonstrates the international recognition of our network and it paves the way for strengthened cooperation to support sustainable development and inclusive growth in Africa.
Parce que l'Afrique ploie encore sous le poids de l'extrême pauvreté.
Because Africa is still buckling under the weight of extreme poverty.
La Banque mondiale estime à plus de 570 millions le nombre de personnes vivant dans l'extrême pauvreté en Afrique subsaharienne en 2025.
The World Bank estimates that more than 570 million people will be living in extreme poverty in sub-Saharan Africa by 2027.
L'accès aux services sociaux de base y est très limité.
Access to basic social services is very limited.
Seulement 53% de la population d'Afrique subsaharienne a accès à l'électricité et seulement 36% des habitants utilisent Internet.
Only 53% of the population of sub-Saharan Africa has access to electricity, and only 36% of inhabitants use Internet.
Le contraste d'un continent riche en ressources naturelles et dont la population croupit dans la misère demeure.
The contrast of a continent rich in natural resources, yet whose population languishes in misery, remains.
Et il est donc plus que temps de changer ces statistiques.
It's more than time to change these statistics.
Il est temps d'accélérer la transformation économique et sociale de nos pays pour concrétiser le rêve porté par l'agenda 2063 de l'Union africaine.
It is time to accelerate the economic and social transformation of our countries to realize the dream enshrined in the African Union's Agenda 2053, a prosperous and integrated Africa.
Indéniablement, notre réseau AMDIN a un rôle à jouer.
Undeniably, our AMDIN network has a role to play.
Indéniablement, nos MDI ont un rôle à jouer.
Undeniably, our MDIs have a role to play.
Heureusement, au terme de ces 3 journées de travail, nous rentrons armés de détermination et outillés sur le leadership transformateur dans la fonction publique pour le développement durable et la croissance inclusive en Afrique.
Fortunately, at the end of these 3 days of work, we return armed with determination and equipped with the tools for transformative leadership in the public sector for sustainable development and inclusive growth in Africa.
Tel a été le thème de cette 2e conférence annuelle accueillie et magnifiquement bien organisée par les NIPAM, que je tiens à remercier de nouveau au nom d'AMDIN pour la qualité de l'organisation et l'hospitalité.
That is the theme that we have shared and which has been well organized by NIPAM, and for which we congratulate them for the quality of everything that has been done.
Je pense qu'on peut applaudir. Voilà. Alors, je terminerai en vous annonçant que la 3e conférence annuelle d'AMDIN aura lieu au Maroc entre mai et juin de l'année prochaine.
I will conclude by announcing officially that the 3rd annual AMDIN Conference will take place in Morocco between May and June of next year.
Vous avez donc le temps de commencer des cours de français parce qu'au Maroc, je parlerai en français et sans interprète, et vous aurez sans doute besoin d'une pharmacie de secours pour calmer vos migraines.
You have time to start French lesson now, because in Morocco I will be speaking French, and there will be no translator, and you will probably need a first aid kit to soothe your headaches.
Par ces mots, je déclare clos les travaux de la 2e conférence annuelle d'AMDIN.
With those few words, I declare the proceedings of the 2nd annual conference of AMDIN closed.
Je vous souhaite bon retour dans vos pays respectifs. En ce qui me concerne, devenu depuis hier citoyen namibien, je reste ici.
Have a safe trip back home to your respective countries. As for me, I became a Namibian citizen yesterday. Therefore, I'm staying here.
Thank you. I'm happy and joyful to have met you here in Namibia. I hope we will meet again next year in Morocco. So see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for that very powerful closing remarks. And we do take note that we are indeed armed with determination and ammunition as we return to our respective countries and our workstations. It is also very enlightening to hear that we will be going to Morocco next year. Yes. The next item on our, as they say, all good things need to come to an end. We need to now give you an update on how we are going to arrange your arrangements to the airport as of after lunch. So can I call Anisha to just come and give us that breakdown of the times and from where we will leave?
Okay, so there will be a group, I think today, leaving at 6. Arrangements have been made. I think it's the SA group. Their luggage is already with the bus. I just wanted to make more emphasis on the pickup times. So if there is still tomorrow, I see 21, 22, and 23. So if your flight is in the hours of 7:10 in the morning, pickups will start from 5. So be ready by 5. And then if your plane is between the hours of 1:30 to 2:30, we will be ready by 12. So be ready by then. And then if you are leaving between the hours of 2:30, please be ready by 12. So strong emphasis is also that we would want you to be at the lobby. Be at the lobby with all your luggage and everything needed so we don't miss you. We will be waiting for 15 to 30 minutes and then start driving because it takes a 30-minute drive to the airport. Okay. And then after lunch, we will then start with the tour after we have the lunch. So everybody to meet at the reception area, whoever is interested in going. A frequent question was asked, do you need money for entrance where you're going? No, but you do need pocket money for wherever you want to buy something. And we only work with Namibian currency or rands. Okay, South African rands. Thank you.
Thank you, Anisha. Now I would like to call upon Dr. Murangi just to give us the vote of thanks and final announcements.
Good afternoon, all delegates. We are coming to the end of our conference. I will say it's a beautiful conference. I have attended so many conferences, and you'll notice that on the last day of the conference, you don't find people. But I can still see that our room is fully packed, and that is a good sign that you are committed to improving the lives of our own people. The message is on behalf of NIPAM, Governing Council, management staff, on behalf of the Government of the Republic of Namibia, This is the message that I'm delivering now. So this is the message from the President of the country, the message from the Prime Minister, and the message from the ED of NIPAM. This conference is reminding us that the future of our country depends on our collective ability to invest in people, to strengthen governance system, to embrace innovation, and to continuously develop the skills and competencies required to navigate an evolving global environment. I was fascinated by the quality of participation, diverse perspectives issued by people, and most importantly, commitment demonstrated by the delegates throughout the conference. And I'm very observant. I'm looking at the time people are arriving. We are not pushing people from the tea break to come in. The altar at the cafeteria, and that is very fascinating. Let me extend my gratitude to the leadership of AMDIN, President, Secretary General, for entrusting NIPAM and Namibia with this huge responsibility for hosting this important continental gathering. And the most important people I should recognize are the delegates, the presenters, the facilitators, the moderators, the panelists. We should thank you for your active participation and valuable contributions, which enriched discussions and made this conference a success. I believe it's a success. You haven't rated the conference, but I think from my experience, I think it was a good conference. To me, this conference was made possible by the delegates. You have sacrificed your time, you have sacrificed your resources, and I believe for a particular purpose, and that is to improve service delivery for our citizens. Let me acknowledge and appreciate our sponsors and our partners. Our sincere gratitude to the Ministry of Health and Social Services from providing the health services at no cost as part of their social responsibility as a ministry. But sometimes within our systems, you will hear a lot of excuses. No, we don't have an ambulance available, all the nurses are occupied. So we appreciate that, and I believe we have also a token of appreciation for the nurses and the ambulance driver. If you don't have, I have made already the commitment. Let's make sure we give them something. Let me equally thank the Office of the Prime Minister for their support. I believe this message will go to ED Ndongo, the Prime Minister. We are going to officially communicate all the partners and all the sponsors to thank them. And the Public Service Commission, your presence also, you are highly appreciated. You hardly find this type of things. Public Service Commissioners sitting with us for all these days. And that is a good sign that as Africa, we are moving in the right direction. And I think colleagues from the Office of the Prime Minister, we should not work together when they are international delegates. We should work together. The office is ours. NIPAM is yours. And collectively, we can make a difference in the lives of our people. the Ministry of Information and Communication Technology, the Namibia Broadcasting Corporation. I think we just heard from Dr. Buti that those who have participated through live streaming platforms, they were 430. And that is because of the service that we are receiving from the ministry and Namibian Broadcasting Corporation. People were asking me, did you buy new cars? I said, no. Those are the sponsors from Pukevitz Toyota. There are 5 of them, beautiful cars, just to pick up our delegates from the airport and to take them around. And we need to thank them, including the ministry, the Office of the Prime Minister also, for the 2 buses that was allocated to us for this particular conference. My colleagues in the media, thank you so much for always being available whenever we call you, and for helping us amplify the conversation, insights, outcomes of this conference to the broader audience. Let me express my sincere appreciation to NIPAM Governing Council. You know I'm in good hands. How many council members? There are 4. They have been with us since day 1. And when you are in board meetings, you will not have issues with them because they will have better understanding in terms of the public sector. We really appreciate you, Yaniske, Dr. Mieves, Michael. I don't see Ms. from NQ, Namibia Qualifications Authority. Biekes, she was here also. We appreciate your participation. Whenever we call them for an event, whether it's an assessment about our risk, they will come. And they will stay with us from the first hour to the last hour. And those are the leadership that we need for our countries. Now, my management staff and the local organizing committee under the able leadership of Guvishita, they know you by now. I think I should appreciate you for your hard work, dedication, teamwork, the professionalism you have demonstrated before and during the conference. When I announced that we are going to host, imagine, no, but Mitiri, they call me Mitiri. Mitiri means teacher. This is the first time, do you think we'll be able to manage? No, I told them I will direct you because I did some conferences before. Colleagues, I think you have really done a good job. You have showed your commitment. You showed the Namibian capability to host this type of engagements. I want to be biased and thank the staff in the cafeteria. It's not always easy to provide meals to people. It's not easy. This one will come and say, no, I want tea with 1 sugar. This one will come and say, I want tea without sugar. But I think I did not hear any complaints. People admitted in hospital because of food poisoning. I think you have done a good job, including those in charge of transport. It's not easy when you are transporting people, and especially after the cocktail functions, and especially after the gala dinner. This one wants to be taken away. There was a group here, I don't want to mention, but they said they are not going to sleep. You never go tired, because that is how we should behave as Namibia, as Namibians, as the host. Africa is ours, Namibia is for all of us. And that is how we should treat people visiting our country. We are indebted to the Amdin President, EXCO, Secretary General, and in particular Pumla, really for supporting and guiding the team on the ground. Constant communication. Sometimes you get so frustrated. No, Pumla said this, okay, let's listen. But I think all these things were done for a very good purpose. And I believe we are more than willing to share our experiences with Morocco, so that sharing them with the checklist and all the things, instruments that we have used to make that conference a success again. Service providers, there are so many people behind the scenes here that we have recruited to provide services, live streaming, all these nice big screens. And I want to thank really Benitez. Sometimes you have to sing out people. The technology this time around did not disappoint us. Thank you so much and your team. If we have offended you in any way or did not meet your expectations, I apologize on behalf of NIPAM, on behalf of the Namibian people. It is not easy to organize an event of this magnitude. It is a learning curve and a very good experience also to us. As you return to your respective countries and institutions, may the relationship built, experiences shared, and knowledge gained during the conference continue to inspire collaboration and innovation in advancing public sector excellence across Africa. We trust that you have enjoyed Namibia hospitality and that you will leave with fond memories and renewed partnership. With those few remarks, I thank you all for your participation, your support, and your commitment towards building stronger institutions and a better Africa. We wish you safe travel to your various destinations, and thank you for listening to me. I don't think there is a need for us to call Gubi again here. We are done with the conference. I think it's time to go to the cafeteria and have lunch and go and see the beauty of Windhoek. Thank you.